Beryl Vaughan is a consultant in practice development, marketing, and business consulting for physicians in the medical legal space as expert witnesses or who conduct evaluations with legal applications. She's worked for 15 years in this field with forensic psychiatrists, psychologists, and for the last 5 years, physicians in other specialties as well. She was a case manager and paralegal for 2 decades prior to turning her attention to the medical expert witness practice, and she educates currently Forensic Psychiatry Fellows at UC Davis, UCSF, UCLA for the past 3 years. So we talk about how to help attorneys find you. If you're interested in this type of work, right, how do attorneys locate you and know that you're interested in it? Should we be advertising in this space, right? Does this impeach you as a witness? Does soliciting this type of work really, make it look like you're a hired gun in this space? Or how do you do it in such a way that it doesn't appear that way? How can we put ourselves out there so lawyers can find us? Aside from lists, should we have a website? What should be on that website? How can we optimize it so we will show up in a lawyer's Google search? And how do we make ourselves identifiable on LinkedIn, which is, a lot of times where attorneys will look to find expert witnesses? And why aren't lawyers DMing me on Twitter, right? So of all the social media, really, LinkedIn is the business place. And so that's the only place where they'll find you. So she helped us optimize our pages.
Welcome to the Physician's Guide to Doctoring, a practical guide for practicing physicians. Dr. Bradley Block interviews experts in and out of medicine to find out everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle. The ideas expressed on this podcast are those of the interviewer and interviewee and do not represent those of their respective employers. And now, here's Dr. Bradley Block.
Beryl Vaughan, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Hey, thank you. Glad to be here.
So you're here to tell us if we're interested in becoming medical expert witnesses, how we can be found, right? How do we make sure that lawyers identify us as potential experts? So where are the lawyers looking?
It's a big question because there are a lot of lawyers. Many of them who have, a personnel injury attorney who always works with orthopedists will have a few people that they're colleagues or they already work with. But if they need someone who's a specialist or is in an area of medicine that attorney doesn't know about, they're quite likely going online. They will often turn to other attorneys and say, who do you work with? But if they need somebody who's really got unique expertise, that's not going to get them very far. Their colleagues will say, well, gee, I don't know anybody who specializes in that particularly unique kind of, surgery / whatever it is. So they go online, and that's a big place. So it gets frustrating for attorneys. They actually are very happy when doctors make it easy for them to find them. I feel like it's sort of foundational. Like there's maybe the end game is you are speaking to the local bar association about your area of medicine as it applies to a particular legal matter. But the foundation for all of that happens at the level of perhaps being listed in some certain directories, good directories, or having a website, writing about your topic of interest and then promoting that. So even joining a legal group on LinkedIn and then promoting that link to that website and opening some conversation. All of these are ways to get on the radar of attorneys. If you do nothing, nothing will happen. So really, honestly, and it's interesting about websites because they don't turn up on page 1 or 2 right away. But they become the thing that's in your signature block on your email to attorneys. They become something that you can tag in a post or in any number of places that will lead attorneys to that website. And that's just one piece of it. They may go to a directory. There's a variety of ways. But attorneys are looking for experts in about something that's come up in their case, like a personal injury is the most common, medical malpractice, of course, any number of areas of civil litigation. They're really at a loss. Plus, let's face it, if they were experts, they wouldn't need an expert witness. And if they knew medicine inside and out, then, all the attorneys in the world would find all the experts in the world easily, and they aren't.
So it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, if you have a very specific area of expertise, this is what you want to put out there. But there are a lot of us who are generalists, right? A lot of internal medicine, pediatricians,
Right.
general orthopedic surgeons, like, you're one of 10,000 hand surgeons out there. Like, I'm a general ENT. So some of us have really niche areas of expertise. And if we want to be identified for that, then give a talk to the local bar about what you do. But what about those of us who are generalists? Like, it seems like that wouldn't apply.
And the local bar presentation is what happens after you do everything else, because the attorneys, they want to hear from you once they kind of have a sense that you have something to offer them. My guiding principle is that education is a marketing tool. Even if you're a generalist in your own mind, as a physician, you say, I treat a variety of patients about a variety of things in my area of expertise. That may not be the same thing to an attorney. So the attorney is thinking, here's my case. Someone was in a car accident. They had these injuries. If they were treated improperly, I think, says the attorney to themselves, or I know, says the client of the attorney. They go in and say, classic, right? I was in a car accident. I have PTSD. My broken foot from 3 years ago is now I can't even walk on it. They have all kinds of medical interpretations, but the attorney doesn't really know. So if you're a generalist, then you have the opportunity to use case studies, for example, to explain how your area of medicine fits into a scenario like that. And you don't have to know law. You can just think in terms of injuries. Just take any injuries that you treat or conditions that you treat and imagine someone has sued someone about that.
Got it.
Or someone has sued someone and that's an element.
Right. So we're not only thinking
that's it
in terms of medical malpractice, we're thinking personal injury as well. Like someone gets injured shoveling snow, or like they slip on the ice in your driveway. They're going to sue you. Hey, I treat broken noses. If you got a broken nose, come to me. Got it.
Okay. And you're an ear, nose, and throat doctor, correct?
Yes.
So I slipped on the ice and now my hearing is impaired. Is it related? Is it not related? You don't know until you do the evaluation and you issue your report and perhaps testify down the road. All expert witness work is both for plaintiff or defense. I mean, if you just work for one side, then it kind of impinges on your your reputation for impartiality. So that's the reality is someone on either side could have a narrative, and the narrative can be, I was injured and now I have, and it's all everyone else's fault. But the doctor's job as an expert witness is to come in and say, okay, let me take a look. Let me take a closer look and see if, that makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense to me, for all kinds of good medical reasons, it might not make sense to a jury or vice versa.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned if we have our own personal website. And so if we're advertising for this type of work on our own personal website, couldn't that be used? Like if we have a website specifically to advertise that we do this type of work, could that be used to impeach us as an expert? Like, oh, you are clearly a hired gun here. Look, you've got your own website. You're trying to sell yourself. Like, could that be used against us?
Well, you've used some words that are triggers for doctors. Advertising is a word that's a trigger for doctors. And I just keep encountering over and over and over again. It's not a half-page ad in the New York Times. Your website should not sell you in that sense. It should report your credentials and give you an opportunity to describe your experience and expertise. You can write about the things you know about, and those are things you know about. Promotional language really doesn't have to suggest the hired gun approach. I have seen a few websites where someone has said, 1,000 plaintiff, results or 1,500 wins. I mean, like that would be the worst kind of website to have. That would be, I would call that a career ender for medical legal work. So if you stay professional and you stay in your lane and you simply report what is true and what is consistent with your knowledge base, then you're not getting any trouble. I mean, there's no problem there.
Okay.
And I think I should add, websites are not the only thing. When I got into this business doing practice development, I wasn't a website developer. It wasn't, what I went into this for. It's just that what I found was that I would literally know somebody who was a forensic psychiatrist, for example, who was a specialist and respected in their field. And I would say, okay, I'm an attorney. I want to find that person. I type in their name and I couldn't find them. I got not even a phone number. That's not a result that will get you cases at the most basic level. But if there are many different platforms that you would be making your information available on, not advertising, making your information available on. And, all of those are features, and the website is one of the features.
So let's stick with the website and flesh this out for a little while.
Sure.
So what type of information do we want to include? Do we want like a downloadable CV, contact information to make it easy to contact you once they found you? But like what else are we including on there?
It depends on a variety of things, including how good a writer are you? How comfortable are you with writing? Can you write for people who aren't other doctors? Not so easy sometimes. It is, okay, if all it has on the website is your phone number and your address and your downloadable CV, that's half the battle.
Okay.
Ideally, you would have some case studies. They could be cases that you have really encountered. If they were adjudicated and if it's a criminal matter, sentencing or jury handed down an award, then it is now public record. So you can write about it in some real detail. If it's a case that was in the news, you can link it to an article in a legitimate news source. But if it's just a case study where you're basically almost speculating, like, here is an example of where my area of medicine might come into play. For example, this happens, that happens, this other thing happens. And these would be my findings, or these are the things that alert me to an issue. If that's what you say on a case study page, that's valuable. There will be attorneys who will have just that very issue or something similar who will be then inspired to give you a call. I like to have articles on my clients' websites that are a little more curated, in the sense that I talk to them and find out, what kind of cases do you want? What kind of things interest you? What are the cases, both as a physician and if you're a medical legal expert, maybe you only have done a few cases. Which are the ones that really interested you? People will say, I like short and sweet. I like to just look at some, if a radiologist might say, I just want to look at some films and look at the medical record and issue my quick opinion and go on to the next one. Another person may say, I love to sink my teeth into a really complicated case. I'm an internist and I just love to talk about the interaction between this person's different medications, their diabetes, and the outcome of their injury. I mean, some people will want to get into that, and that will serve their goals. So that would be a great article to write. In the world of promoting websites, Google has, they have an algorithm for how early they put a website on the pages. And, if I knew the algorithm, I would be the wealthiest woman in the world. But we do know there are some things that Google has made clear to the public. One is they want valuable content. So they're looking at the person who types in a question and is looking for an answer. And if your website provides some good, clear answers, then you will get promoted a little higher on the page for Google. So that's where these articles come in. It's a great opportunity. You can assume the attorney's going to type in something very obscure. I mean, they have a very unusual little niche. You're not saying, do I need a medium or a large red t-shirt? That's not what they're typing in. So if you've written about this rather unusual thing, you're more likely to come up. So
We've
I
actually
like to
talked
see
about,
articles, case
on a
studies.
prior episode, like SEO doesn't work for just broadly putting lots of words on your site. You want to make sure that you don't come up as the first search for everybody. You want to make sure that you come up quickly for your particular niche. So that's why you're writing about your particular niche, so that when somebody does search for that, you come up for them and only them. So,
and Google has, because of their value applied to information and from legitimate sources, a search that may seem unusual, the first page might be entirely sort of Google Scholar things. And I think that's actually admirable for Google to make that priority, as opposed to, the highest bidder. That if you're on the second page, that's a fantastic result. Frankly, there will be so many other sort of not competitors of yours on the page too. It's not until the attorney gets to people they really want to talk to that I really care about where my clients fall. I don't care if it's page 1, page 2, page 3, as long as they're ahead of
beat
5
out
other
the
people.
the other experts. That makes sense.
Exactly,
That makes sense.
exactly.
So some of us have websites already because we have, like, we're a coach. I'm not, but some of us are,
or a clinical site,
or coaches. Right. It might be our practice site. Maybe we're an author. Maybe we're, I don't know, podcast host. So that we've got our own websites. Can this page just be like an extension of that site? Like, I have my site about my podcast, and then there's a link on there to my page. I'm not even sure the lingo, like my medical expert page on that site. Does that work? Or this should be like an independent?
It can. Ideally, it's independent. And your domain name reflects that. And all of the content is consistent. There are people who feel like it's a much easier shortcut to put a page on their existing site. Your existing site would have to have something to do with the medical legal. So the podcast website might not be it, but the clinical site might be. Attorneys appreciate knowing that you are in the trenches every day doing the medicine that you claim to know about. But here's the problem with clinical sites with a forensic page. Patients don't always understand what medical legal work is. And it's not impossible for patients to begin to wonder, I don't know what this means. Does this mean that if somebody sues me, my doctor's going to walk out there with all my medical information? We know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but not all patients know that. So that is a little bit of a danger of throwing that on a clinical site. If you just want to have one page where you say very basically that you offer those services, and this is how you can be reached, you can accomplish it that way. One of the things I do this comes up all the time. I have a client who has a clinical site. So we have a tab on the menu that says, her forensic work. She's a forensic psychiatrist, says forensic psychiatry. And when you click on that menu item, instead of going to a page on that site, it takes you to the other site. If you click on the clinical menu page on the forensic site, it takes you to her clinical page as well. So the attorney can find each thing. You don't want to have that conversation with your patients about what that all means. I mean, it's really a waste of everyone's time, and you're reassuring patients, and you've got better things to talk to your patients about.
And you don't want that to drive anyone away. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So that's my recommendation. It's not to say that people don't try and make one site do all things, but it's hard to pull that off. And it's almost more work. It's almost more trouble than it is worth.
What about LinkedIn?
Oh, I love LinkedIn. I hate all other social media.
Okay.
I mean, my sister does a lot of genealogy, and she taught me her tricks. Want to find your third cousin? Go on Facebook. Want to, you see where this is going, right? All of this information is very public. You want to throw this very serious professional statement about yourself on the internet. You really don't want to do it on Facebook. People do. Some people get some cases. I don't think you get that many cases. I think on Facebook, you meet other doctors that do what you do, more likely. But LinkedIn is what's called a B2B platform, business to business. So attorneys are expected to talk to not only other attorneys, but other professionals. So it's a perfect platform for that kind of conversation. So I recommend that all my clients have a LinkedIn account, that they join attorney groups, that they make sure their title on their profile image, perhaps the profile background or header, that all of those say something about their medical legal practice. And I think it's just a good tool. If you're so inclined and you want to post every week or twice a week, you have a lot to share with attorneys, then that's even better. Although you have to be very careful about, okay, so here's the thing about the way LinkedIn works. I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but it's kind of interesting. If you're on LinkedIn, you'll notice if somebody comments on what you've posted, you get a little red dot next to the word notification. And of course, you're going to say, well, gee, I wonder what that was. Somebody said something or did something. So imagine that you read the post of an attorney and you want to respond. All you have to do, I mean, normally you would hit the little thumbs up or something, and that little notification will come up. And if that attorney had a reason to want to reach out to you or know about you, they might click on your profile, which is, where they would find out more, including a link to your website, by the way. Well, you don't want to be thumbs upping things that you don't know about. Like an attorney says, we got our client off the hook for the, mass homicide. You don't want to be that person who's thumbs up, because now that becomes almost like a political statement. Or, so I think that says it. So here's what it is. On LinkedIn, you get a variety of responses. One is a curious face. When in doubt, use the curious face. I'm curious about what you said. I don't have a strong opinion about it one way or the other, or I'm not going to share it with you right now. Red dot comes up above notification, and you have a moment to be on someone's radar. So LinkedIn is great for that. If you just want to kind of do something basic, just log in once a day and click some curious faces and move on. Or if you want to be a person who creates a lot of posts, that's fine too. I think it's a great platform for creating a little bit of a communication with attorneys, not in the sense of a conversation, not in the sense of a message, in the sense of they learn something about you. They have a reason to look at your profile. They have a reason to then move on from there, hopefully towards a phone call to you.
Yeah. Okay, great. So then on LinkedIn, we're going to put the fact that we do this medical expert witness work on a number of different places on the site, on our page, so that it's easy to identify that we do it. And then you said that there are lawyer groups as well. So there will become members. I mean, what are they?
Right. So, you
work?
might type into the search on LinkedIn, something like lawyers. Let's just say you're in a small town, lawyers, Gainesville, Florida.
Yeah.
And you might reach out to connect with anybody who pops up, assuming that it's in an area that makes sense for you. I mean, maybe not an intellectual property attorney, maybe not, it would depend, but you would look for people who had some case you thought you might have something to do about, and reach out and connect with them. There are also groups like personal injury attorneys, 12,000 members. 12,000 people don't log on every day to see what you've had to say. But it doesn't really matter. You want 3, 3 to read what you say, all 3 of them to think about you, forget about you, and a year from now when they have a case, call you. That has just paid for itself, that effort. So and also I should add that it's important that attorneys know that you're a clinician at least some of the time. So in your title on LinkedIn, you want to make sure that that's clear. And there's all, I work with some doctors who are DOs. And so I did a little poll. DO means, it was like ophthalmologist, chiropractor, physician, and not everyone got it right, which was sort of shocking. So now I make all the DOs put the word physician in their title. Sometimes it's educator. So sometimes it's the area of medicine, comma, medical legal consultant. That's your title.
Yeah.
You've now communicated what you need to. But that's just LinkedIn. I mean, there are many of these platforms for marketing and promoting your practice. The key is to, wherever you do it and whatever you say, is to stay serious. You don't know what attorney is looking at it. I mean, just even for example, you could have been retained in a case. Opposing counsel's getting ready to depose you. They're looking for dirt on you. You want to make sure there's no dirt to be found. And by dirt, I mean, doctor, isn't it true that you said on your site that all cases like this are untreatable? Or that this is almost impossible to treat? Isn't that true that you said that, or that you wrote that, or that you posted it on LinkedIn or whatever? So you just keep it neutral. You stay with what you know. And that's a pretty safe way to go. You use all these platforms, but you want to be the serious professional that you are. You don't want to, you don't need to leave that behind. I know a psychologist who is very funny. Almost nobody can get on the stand with a sense of humor and get away with it, but he could. And the attorney said, well, doctor, isn't it true that you advertise in this directory and that directory? Choosing the word advertise very intentionally to make it seem a little slimy. And the doctor said, yeah, got to feed my kids. Jury cracked up. Wasn't a big deal. Nobody is surprised to know that you want to have your phone number available to people who may want to learn more about your area of medicine as it applies to their legal case, right?
Yeah, no. Makes sense. And we've talked about this before on the show that to some degree, it's an obligation to the profession that we use our expertise in this way. And it would even make sense for it to be a requirement. It's not, but it would be a requirement of, board certification for you to work as an expert witness on almost like jury duty, so that everyone has to go through the process, and everyone, rather than having people who are, hired with this particular area of expertise, if you have like on a rotating basis and everyone's got to do it, well, now the whole, it throws the whole business of medical malpractice a big monkey wrench, because you're not going to be able to get, a predictable answer from the expert witness that you've hired to, for your particular case.
Right. The term of art is opine, which sort of cracks me up. To render your opinion, your findings, to opine. Yeah. And, if we want to get a little bit bigger in our perspective, and I do, I mean, not just now, but in general, the legal system is a natural remedy for a wrong that has been committed, assuming liability is proven. The wrong that could be committed is the suing of the person with the deep pocket without, adequate justification. The wrong could be someone's injured because someone else was negligent. And the remedy is, it could be financial, it could be treatment, it could be a variety of things. It could be punitive. If it's a big hospital, they may want to do punitives.
That's the theory behind it, but in practice, that's not the outcome.
The reality, yeah, right. And actually 99% of the time the case settles. Yeah. But this is what you're saying about sort of a little bit of an obligation. I don't know if I would call it an obligation, but I would certainly say doctors bring to the table expertise that serves the justice system, and the justice system is a good thing. We have it, it's a good thing. Yes. And we're not all doctors, and neither are jurors. So, it serves the system entirely for people who know what they're talking about to, explain to the rest of us what it all means.
So if one of our listeners, they like what they heard, they want to put themselves out there, and they need to hire someone to help put them out there, where do they find you?
Well, I got the website domain that was available, and I apologize in advance. I think it sounds like a carpet cleaning service. It's Forensic Expert Pro. So it's spelled the way it sounds, Forensic Expert Pro. And that is my website, and my email is go@forensicexpertpro.com, that being a little bit faster to type. And I can give you my phone number, but honestly, I think it makes more sense to go to my website, look at the About page, learn about me, learn about my philosophy of marketing, and see if that makes sense. Because I think that, we're back to the role of the website, right? You didn't find me on page 1, but now you may wish to go and visit and learn more. And that is the best outcome for a website.
That's what we're open for. Well, Beryl Vaughan, thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Bradley Block at the Physician's Guide to Doctoring. He can be found at physiciansguidetodoctoring.com or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have a question for a previous guest or have an idea for a future episode, send a comment on the webpage. Also, please be sure to leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform. We'll see you next time on the Physician's Guide to Doctoring.